Welcome to the story of 50 years of AmicusHorizon. As a resident, I'm proud to be part of an organisation with such a fantastic history. We hope you enjoy the film.
Some of the conditions we saw that people were living in were quite deplorable. The rooms were damp, very damp. Babies sleeping in cots against a damp wall, wallpaper hanging off the wall, lavatories shared between a number of families.
There was one family, I remember, a family with two children still in nappies, with the nappies hanging round the only room that they lived, ate and slept in. They couldn't afford any more accommodation because of the terrible costs of rented accommodation, and there were virtually no other solutions at that time.
Local authorities were doing their very best to house them, but they didn't have the resources.
In the 1950s and 60s, these were London's hidden homeless. Not on the street and visible for all to see, but families living in squalid and overcrowded conditions, often exploited by unscrupulous landlords. Since 1956, CHAS, the Catholic Housing Aid Society, had been doing its best through local branches to offer families advice and solutions to their housing problems.
When we started this branch in Norbury Parish, we found people came to us with their problems. So I said to my friend Jack Griffin, why don't we buy a house, Jack, and turn it into flats for homeless families? And we raised some money and we got a mortgage from the London County Council and we bought our first house. And I said to Jack, I think we've done our bit now, Jack, haven't we? He said, no, we'll go on and buy a few more.
And so it began and steadily grew. In 1966, 12 million people tuned into the BBC to watch the Wednesday play Cathy Come Home. The final traumatic scene showed the removal of Cathy's children as all housing options had been exhausted.
The film Cathy Come Home had a huge influence on public opinion. Some people thought it was exaggerated. From our experience, it certainly wasn't exaggerated at all.
On the back of raised public awareness, local CHAS branches in South London came together to form the South London Family Housing Association, marking the start of a more professional era for John and his fellow volunteers. As the 60s turned into the 70s, our property portfolio grew through the conversion of street properties. But in 1973, we dipped our toe into the development of new-built homes. Coulsdon Woods in Surrey, now known as Rotherwick Rise, was our first foray into house building, and it wouldn't be our last.
The 1980s and 1990s saw South London Family Housing Association emerge as a really big player. In 1980, we set up Crystal Palace Housing Association to develop and sell shared ownership. We took advantage of the 1988 Housing Act to get into mixed funding to really increase our new build programme, and we led a number of major regeneration projects across the capital.
At that time, local authorities were struggling to regenerate the inner city council estates. So in 1995, funding became available for the regeneration and transfer of these estates to housing associations. And South London Family Housing Association again expanded their portfolio.
To ensure the long-term success of these projects, we looked at more than just improvements to the homes themselves. Nowadays, we take community development for granted, but in the early 90s, the concept was pioneering.
People for Action was an attempt to invest in whole communities.
So rather than just building a home for them to live in, it's about helping those people back into work and give them whatever help that we can offer them.
Outside of London, the 90s had seen the South London Family Housing Association make links with local authorities in Kent and Sussex. In the counties, there was an increasing appetite for stock transfers from local authorities to housing associations.
We find it increasingly hard to find the capital resource to increase the number of that housing stock.
At the time of stock transfer, the issues that were confronting us was the need to modernise and refurbish existing homes.
It was in a dreadful condition. Outside toilet, coal hole. It was just, well, as a 1930s house was.
It was drafty, it had iron window frames, it used to ice up in the winter.
Stock transfer was a great way to engage with residents. It was an opportunity to ask them what kind of services they wanted, what improvements to their homes they wanted, and what kind of landlord they wanted.
That was the first time that residents were actually asked for their views and to make a decision on their homes.
It felt right, it really did feel right, and I've always loved talking to residents, so yeah, it was the start of something big for me because I've just carried on doing it ever since.
In 1990, Swale Borough Council transferred their stock to the newly formed Swale Housing.
The main benefit from the stock transfer was the provision of new housing. So there are something like 1,500 housing units there now that wouldn't have been if we hadn't done the transfer. So that's the main thing, it was the benefit to people on the waiting list.
In 1998, Rother District Council transferred their housing stock to the newly formed Rother Homes.
When we moved into the new house, it was unbelievable. Like living in Buckingham Palace, I suppose. Double glazing, central heating, you name it, it was there really.
As the end of the century beckoned, financial pressures led to the formation of group structures. As well as benefiting from the economies of scale, the centralisation of services drove efficiencies and value for money. In 1999, the Amicus Group was formed, comprising Swale Housing, 1066 in Hastings and Crowbridge. In 2001, under the umbrella name of Horizon, a group structure was formed, comprising the South London Family Housing Association, Rother Homes and Southern Horizon. In 2006, Amicus and Horizon became one. However, such a massive merger did not come without its challenges.
In 2007, we were put into regulatory supervision by the Housing Corporation. We were a number of housing associations brought together. The mergers hadn't bedded in. We spent too much time talking amongst the housing associations and not talking to and delivering for the tenants. The regulatory supervision period was the time when we turned that around.
Residents designed a new residents' governance structure. This ensured that residents were at the heart of decision making, and from this we have achieved many awards.
It was a turning point, it was a game changer. Finding out what really adds value and what really makes a difference to our customers, that's what the governance and resident involvement has enabled us to do.
They listen. They've stopped to listen and they really take notice.
AmicusHorizon is striving to be the best landlord, and anyone who's striving to be the best tend to listen to their tenants.
The difference is we're working with residents and it's just a natural partnership.
They've won Tenant of the Year awards and awards for young tenants 3 years in a row. I think this shows that they really want to work with residents of all ages and backgrounds.
We all work together as one team, residents, staff and board members, and we're all focused on ensuring that decisions are made quickly, clearly and in the interest of the tenants.
They're not just a housing supplier, they are very much one of the shapers of the community, working alongside the Borough Council in terms of taking this borough forward.
Today, AmicusHorizon is doing extremely well and they house over 30 families every single week.
We're building an extra 1,300 homes by March 2018. We're providing volunteering, providing training, and we're providing jobs.
When I was privileged to cut a cake to celebrate AmicusHorizon's 50th birthday, I must say I look back with a certain degree of pride that the first house we bought in Norbury Crescent and the 3 flats we produced there. And then I looked and see what AmicusHorizon has got today, 28,000 properties. I thought, well, little acorns produce some very big oak indeed.
Making homes, helping people is what we do and will continue to do in the years to come.